Every driver values a top safety record. No one wants to have to pull around to the back parking lot of a weigh station and be given a citation for shifting cargo or improper securement.
Driver, pull your truck in the parking lot, park it over the inspection pit.
How you doing today, driver?
It all began in 2004. There were significant changes to cargo in trucks. Since that time, we've had additional changes that motor carriers must know and adhere to. We'll take a look at the new federal regulations, how they impact you, and what you need to do to be in compliance and ensure the safe movement of cargo.
Yeah, your medical card, your registration.
The Specialized Carriers and Rigging Association, or SC&RA, continues to work closely with the United States Department of Transportation and the Canadian Council of Motor Transport Administrators in drafting proposed regulations. As we go through the changes, we will reference by number the sections of the North American Standard for Protection Against Shifting and Falling Cargo. So follow along and review the official language. As with most federal regulations, there are different ways of interpreting it. But first, a quick footnote. This video is designed to be a training aid only, part of a larger overall training program. If there's a question securing cargo, contact your safety manager. Let's start out by who's impacted by the new rules. Section 392.9 says, a driver may not operate a commercial motor vehicle, and a motor carrier may not require or permit a driver to operate a commercial motor vehicle unless cargo is properly distributed and adequately secured.
Looks good the way you've got it secured here in the middle. Got the lock bar in position. That's excellent.
So the burden to comply is with the driver and motor carrier.
It's all good. It's all good. Looks good.
Virginia State Trooper Mark Quince has been trained in the new regulations and is ready to enforce them.
It's going to be up to the individual driver as well as the company and their training policies to make sure that they get the word out to their drivers to make sure that, hey, look, you're hauling boulders today, but you might be hauling pipe tomorrow. And it may be different how you secure it. It's up to you to make sure that it's right. Because if I inspect you, you have to know it.
Which vehicles are covered under the rules? Section 393.100, Applicability. The rules in this subpart are applicable to trucks, truck tractors, semi-trailers, full trailers, and pole trailers. So what's changed? There have been significant changes in load securement requirements. Everything from securing cargo inside a van, to the use and number of tie-downs, to performance criteria for securement devices, to commodity-specific securement requirements for heavy equipment and other items. 11 commodities are now singled out for specific securement requirements. This impacts many specialized transportation companies. Section 393.116 through 136 applies to logs, lumber, and building products, metal coils, paper rolls, concrete pipe, intermodal containers, automobiles, light trucks, vans, heavy equipment vehicles, equipment and machinery, flattened or crushed vehicles, roll-on, roll-off, or hook-lift containers, and large boulders.
To secure it. So
Pete Trimble is Safety Director for Keene Transport in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Several years ago, there was changes made to the regulations that some people still aren't aware of. And those changes were, not only do we now have the general commodities regulations that cover all types of cargo, but now also we have commodity-specific regulations that specify certain things have to be done with load securement when hauling those types of cargo, such as logs, lumber, metal coils, heavy construction equipment, boulders, crushed cars, and those types of products.
So what if there are conflicting rules between general and specific commodity tie-downs? Section 393.106, the commodity-specific rules take precedence over the general requirements when additional requirements are given for a commodity listed in those sections. In other words, all general requirements apply in addition to specific requirements for a commodity. Later on, we'll take a look at a few commodity-specific rules. But first, the general rules and some recent changes. What's the most noteworthy in the general rules? Tie-downs, securing them to anchor points and the formula used to determine the number needed. Section 393.110. What else do I have to do to determine the minimum number of tie-downs? Cargo not blocked from moving forward by a headboard or bulkhead must be secured by at least 1 tie down for cargo 5 feet long or less and 1,100 pounds or less, 2 tie downs for cargo longer than 5 feet but less than or equal to 10 feet, irrespective of weight, load longer than 10 feet and 1 tie down for every 10 feet or fraction beyond the first 10 feet, loads blocked, braced, immobilized, 1 tie down every 10 feet or fraction thereof. In many cases, drivers may have to increase the number of tie downs to secure certain types of cargoes. Al Koenig, Midwest Specialized Transportation.
We're going to add probably 25 or 30% more load securement devices just to be sure that we are going to comply with the new standards, because again, it's going to be up to interpretation. But again, when it comes to highway safety, how much is too much? You know, I think we can do the job and comply and go ahead from there.
The new rules also impact cargo inside a van. Before, cargo could be placed in a van with little or no securement depending on the type of cargo. Now it must be secured to avoid movement or shifting, or you could be found in violation and fined.
Friction mats should be used whenever practical. The cargo should be secured inside the trailer so that it doesn't move from side to side or from end to end, and those are important things. And of course, the law enforcement community will be allowed to break the seals on any containers or trailers to determine whether the cargo is safely secured within the trailer.
Section 393.114. Front-end structures must meet certain performance criteria if it's part of the securement system. It goes on to address this scenario where the weight of these shingles requires securing it in the middle of the flatbed away from the header board. Under E, substitute devices. Alternate devices performing the same function as a front-end structure can be used to protect against shifting cargo. Crisscrossing these tie-downs gives the shingles an equally strong hold and conforms to the new federal rules. Richard Neergaard is Safety Director for the motor carrier industry.
This particular trailer has a headboard on it. Not all trailers do, not all flatbeds would have headboards. So when they talk about putting the load up to the headboard, if they do that, a lot of times the load will not be loaded properly per weight, which would get you an over ticket. So this one here has been centered on the trailer, away from the headboard, but we got our forward restraints on it to keep it moving forward, which is basically the principle of the headboard on the trailer.
The North American Standard for Protection Against Shifting and Falling Cargo has many new securement device rules in Section 393.104. Here are the highlights. Prohibition on the use of damaged securement devices.
This is a damaged chain. It's got everything wrong with it except a broken link. It's got some bent links and they're twisted. It's got gouge marks in it. It's also got some links that have been drug on the ground and worn thin. Penalty for using a chain like that that's damaged would be that you could be put out of service, the driver could be put out of service, which means that that load could not move until a good chain was put back on the load again.
Material for dunnage, chocks, cradles, shoring bars, blocking bracing must not have damage or defects. Use of tie-downs. No knots. Repair in accordance with manufacturer's instructions.
You got some cuts here where it's starting to fray, but you know, keep an eye on that. Right.
This chain is a repaired chain where it had been broken, and an appropriate repair link put back in it to make it a good chain again.
Secure in a manner that prevents it from loosening or releasing in transit. There's been a change here. The new rule requires binder handles to be secured in a manner that prevents them from opening.
The regulations require that a binder handle be secured in a manner that prevents it from becoming loose and unfastening or releasing while in transit. You can wrap a chain around it like we have here to prevent that handle from coming open in transit, or you can use a bungee cord to secure the handle in a way that it can't pop open or release while in transit.
Edge protection must be used whenever a tie-down would be subject to abrasion or cutting. And the use of rub rails in tie-downs, it's been changing. Previously, the rules stated that tie-downs must go inside the rub rail whenever practicable. This caused confusion and has now been rescinded.
We've run the strap inside the rub rail on its first move, wrapped it around and hooked it to the rub rail, or to the stake pocket, I should say, helps protect it a little bit, but also uses the hook in the proper manner.
The general rules also involve the working load limit. All devices used to secure cargo have a working load limit or restraint capacity. The number and types of devices for the aggregate working load limit or the overall force needed to prevent a load from shifting. A chart listing the load ratings of securement devices is located in section 393-108. When securing cargo, know the height and weight of the cargo. Check the tie-down material for the working load limit marked by the manufacturer, or if it's not listed, check the chart located in the federal regulations on working load limits for securement devices.
Well, and a driver needs to first of all start out knowing what the weight of the cargo is that he's hauling. And then from there, needs to know the securement devices that he's going to use to secure the load. And then going to the chart that is supplied in the federal regulations and by the chain manufacturers. And once the driver knows the working load limit of the securement devices he's using and knows the weight of the cargo that he's hauling, he can determine how many securement devices need to be used to secure that weight.
If you use unmarked tie-downs, you must use the lowest working load limit for the tie-down device. Here's how it reads, section 393-108D. Unmarked tie-downs are considered to have a working load limit equal to the lowest rating for that type in the table of working load limits. In other words, if you use unmarked chains or other tie-down devices, this rule may result in adding more tie-downs or risk getting a ticket.
If you don't have enough chains on there, then the driver's looking at a fine. If they can't see the marking on there as to what grade it is, then it goes to the lowest grade level. If they can't read it, then they have to put more on. It's that simple. You need to do what you need to do to hold that load on without losing it.
To meet the new federal standards for securing cargo, the aggregate working load limit formula keeps us in compliance. The aggregate working load limit for our securement devices is 1/2 the weight of the cargo. The federal standards go on to clarify tying down cargo using anchor points. There's 3 anchor point scenarios. 1. A tie down that goes from an anchor point on the vehicle to an anchor point on the cargo equals 50% of the working load limit. 2. A tie down that's attached to an anchor point on the vehicle and passes through, over, or around the cargo and attaches back to the same side of the vehicle counts for 50% of the working load limit. And 3, a tie down that goes from one anchor point on the vehicle through, over, or around the cargo and then attaches to an anchor point on the other side of the vehicle is 100% of the working load limit. Determining the working load limit is one of the most important factors in keeping your cargo safe from shifting or falling off the vehicle. So, a quick review. We must recognize a 3-step process. First, determine the minimum working load limits of your securement devices. Second, calculate the minimum aggregate working load limit. Third, review the general and commodity-specific rules to determine if there's a minimum number of tie-downs required. If you've taken these steps, you can consistently determine tie-down requirements and be good to go. Check with your safety manager if there are any questions. Many drivers and motor carriers haul heavy, over-dimensional loads. Sections 393-116 through 136 entitle specific securement requirements by commodity type. It goes into great detail on securing 11 types of cargo. Remember, the commodity-specific requirements take precedence over any conflicting general requirements. This section contains a lot of detail. If you haul any of these items, consult your safety manager and read the rules. Let's take a look at 2 specific commodities to give you an idea of the new rules. Heavy vehicles, equipment, and machinery, and concrete pipe. Section 393-130. What are the rules for securing heavy vehicles, equipment, and machinery? Applicability. The rules in this section apply to the transportation of heavy vehicles, equipment, and machinery which operate on wheels or tracks, such as front-end loaders, bulldozers, tractors, and power shovels, and which individually weigh 10,000 pounds or more. If it is lighter than 10,000 pounds, it may also be secured in the same way. Preparation of equipment being transported. Accessory equipment such as hydraulic shovels must be completely lowered and secured to the vehicle.
This excavator that we're hauling here is listed as a power shovel in the commodity-specific regulations. And what it says is that all shovels have to be lowered to their lowest point, and the shovel has to be secured to the trailer separate from the machine itself.
Articulated vehicles shall be restrained in a manner that prevents articulation while in transit. In other words, if something can swing around, secure it so it doesn't.
Articulating machines are basically machines that bend in the middle to steer. With the current regulations, the articulating lock bar needs to be in place, and that was not part of the previous regulations.
Securement of heavy vehicles, equipment, or machinery with crawler tracks or wheels must be restrained against movement in the lateral, forward, rearward, and vertical directions using a minimum of 4 tie-downs. Each tie-down must be affixed as close as practical to the front and rear of the vehicle, or mounting points on the vehicle that have been specifically designed for that purpose.
They've got securement points marked on them for tie-down, okay, such as here. Now here's an example too where a chain, he's come down through the stake pocket, not on the rub rail, he's still with inside, still, the parameters are still there. Also, on pneumatic tires thing, you should never secure straight up and down. It should always be fore and aft and at an angle.
Concrete pipe, Section 393-124. Each possible concrete pipe scenario is covered in the commodity-specific rules. Pipes over 45 inches in diameter must each be immobilized with wedges and have at least 1 tie-down going through them. Pipes less than 45 inches have various approved tie-down arrangements depending on how the pipes are stacked. It's all laid out and there's not much guesswork. Jeff Peltier is Safety Director of Lafarge Companies. They haul concrete pipe.
It's spelled out better the way things are supposed to be done, where before it was kind of random and we just did the best we could. I think now it's specific to our industry, the way that things should be tied down.
The formula for determining the minimum amount of force resistance cargo must be able to withstand is called performance criteria. This federal standard for preventing shifting loads states that securement systems must withstand forces in 4 directions: forwards, sideways or lateral, upward, backward or rearward. Refer to Section 393-102A2 in your manual. Forward force. Force in the forward direction would most often occur when the vehicle is braking. The cargo securement system must be able to resist a force equal to 43.5% of the cargo weight. Sideways force. Force in the sideways or lateral direction occurs when the vehicle is turning, changing lanes, or braking while turning. The cargo securement system must be able to resist a force equal to 25% of the cargo weight. Upward force, also known as vertical movement. Force in the upward direction occurs when the vehicle is traveling over bumps in the road or cresting a hill. The cargo securement system must be able to resist a force equal to 20% of the cargo weight. The exception is if the cargo is fully contained. The requirement is usually met if the cargo is secured by tie-downs. And rearward force. Force in the rearward direction occurs when the vehicle accelerates, shifts gear climbing a hill, or brakes in reverse. The cargo securement system must be able to resist a force equal to 50% of the cargo weight. Loads shift. Securement devices loosen. Drivers must check and recheck cargo to detect such conditions before they cause any accidents or damage to the load. Stay on top of your trip inspection schedule. The safety rules give drivers 50 miles within the beginning of a trip to stop and check. The exceptions are sealed vehicles or when inspection isn't practical.
If a load is tarped, it may not be real easy to get in underneath that tarp without untarping the entire load to get in there and inspect the securement devices. We also have a situation with sealed trailers, some overseas containers and some other types of vehicles that actually have a seal on that door to prevent theft and people from just getting inside and looking around. Those seals are on there for security reasons, and the regulations allow that load or that seal cannot be broken unless there's a government official.
Federal rules go on to state when a driver must inspect cargo. Even though this section hasn't changed, it's worth reviewing. Re-examination and any necessary adjustments must be made whenever the driver makes a change of duty status, the vehicle has been driven 3 hours, or the vehicle has been driven 150 miles, whichever occurs first. Under Section 393.112, each tie-down or its associated connector or its attachment mechanism must be designed, constructed, or maintained so the driver of an in-transit commercial motor vehicle can tighten it. This requirement does not apply to steel straps. Truck weigh stations are where the rubber meets the road. If your load isn't secured properly, state troopers are there to ensure compliance.
Well, it's going to be real important for you to become familiar with the regulations and, if necessary, carry a copy with you.
Several years ago, federal regulations changed dramatically, and more recently they've been revised. It's all an effort to maintain high standards of safety for drivers and motor carrier companies transporting cargo.
I believe that the industry will benefit from these new regulations, and they should make the highway certainly safer and reduce claims and accidents. And we certainly are embracing them here at our company, and we feel that it'll be a benefit to the entire industry.
The Specialized Carriers and Rigging Association members pride themselves on safety. Before you kick it into gear, know the federal state regulations for protection against shifting and falling cargo. Check your load securement with your safety manager. No one wants to be on the receiving end of a citation or fine or be forced out of service. Complying with the regulations isn't just the law, it's the safe thing to do. The safe movement of cargo and the safety of the motoring public is every carrier's top priority. If there's a question about securing a load, contact your safety manager. Motor carriers should make the federal regulations and other reference materials available to their drivers to aid in the training and compliance process.